So, joined with the Georgie, I am here to talk about mental health. I want to speak on my story, dealing with OCD and anxiety and depression most of my life, for as long as I can remember, honestly. And my purpose with this is, Georgie, get out of my way. My purpose with this is to not only help people who maybe feel a little bit alone, because the stuff I've dealt with, I didn't find a lot of help online. I didn't hear a lot of stories that were like really similar, to mine. And I also feel like I can, George, sorry that I'm gonna be interrupted the whole time. I also feel like I can speak on it now because my mental health was the worst it has ever been in my life, and that's a lot to say. 4 to 6 months ago, and I hit an all-time low, rock bottom, and I knew that I needed to get help. Finally, I had fucking hell! I'm so sorry. I'm probably gonna crop these parts out of this. I knew that I needed to get help, finally, because it was so bad. And I feel like I can speak on it now because I've learned how to manage, especially my OCD and my anxiety so well. I'm not healed, and as we know, you can't just get rid of mental illness, but I feel like I have some tools that I can share with you. And also, I just want to put this out there for anybody who needs it. So first things first, I'm Bree. If you don't know me, which probably a lot of you or whoever comes and watches this doesn't know me, this is George, my little puppy. He's very hyper all the time. I even gave him hemp calming tablets this morning, and he still is acting like this. So anyway, where to begin? When I was 7, I had my first panic attack. We're gonna leave the boring details out of this. When did you have your first panic attack, George? Okay, when I was 7, I had my first panic attack. The worst experience ever. I thought the world was just gonna end, and I thought I couldn't breathe. And I remember being outside of a grocery store near my home where I grew up with my mom, and I said, no, I can't breathe. I said, I can't breathe. You need to take me to the hospital. And she was like, what the hell? You're 7. You're 7. You don't have any health problems. She was just like, okay. And she took me to the emergency room. By the time I got to the emergency room, I felt a lot better because it was a fleeting panic attack. But they still checked me and obviously didn't find anything wrong. And from then on, I had kind of spontaneous panic attack. George, sit down. Sit, bubbies, sit. Good boy. Okay, here we go. Anyway, so I had fleeting panic attacks basically my whole life. It got really bad when I was in middle school because I had some, deaths around me, and I always had OCD, which I didn't know at the time was OCD, involving death and things like that. So I also had a health anxiety really bad, so I always thought there was going to be something wrong with my health or my heart, or just me in general, and I was always really scared of that. So that was what my anxiety kind of revolved around, was my health and also the health of my family members, and that's where OCD comes into play. So I started trying to do things later in life to save my family. So for instance, since I had such a fear surrounding death, a lot of my, George, what in the world? Okay, a lot of my fears surrounded death, like I said, and especially as a kid, I just didn't quite understand it, and I was very fearful of it. But the panic attacks were more prevalent in my younger age. But when I piece things together as an adult and I think back on it, I always had OCD. It was always my anxiety and my panic attacks were always stemming from OCD. I would think, and I would obsess. I would ruminate, which is just very deep thinking on something, to where you just freak yourself the fuck out, and then you do compulsions to try to stop it. And there's also pure OCD. It's more mental compulsions that people do, but I'm not going to get into all the topics of OCD. I'm just going to talk about mine. When I was in middle school, I remember thinking that the school was contaminated and having to take my clothes off every day after school, put them in the laundry, and take a shower because I needed to wash like the dirty school air off of me. If you don't know about OCD, do not say anything in the comments because this is just how it is. And people who have OCD, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, or at least you'll understand a little bit more. So basically things like that I did growing up. And there were moments in time when it was fucking terrible. And there were moments in my life where I was happy. So I'm not saying that my whole life was fucking shit, because externally I had, you know, my family to support me, but at the time I still didn't understand what was going on with me. Anxiety wasn't really as talked about as it is now, and OCD wasn't as talked about as it is now. I didn't know I had OCD till years later, just because I thought it was like an organization or cleaning disease, which it is not at all. That can be a form of OCD, but you're always organizing or cleaning because you have a fear of something. Anyway, I love to understand the why of things, and I think that's a big problem with my OCD as well, because there were just some things you can't rationalize with OCD, and I always tried to rationalize them. So, to continue on, when I was in high school, my anxiety started to subside, but I started to get more OCD. We'll talk about that in a little bit, because it continued to affect me into like my adult years. And when I moved away from my family when I was 19, it started to get really bad. I did go through some losses as well, and like I said, death always triggered me. And so when this happened, it triggered my OCD to the point where I started having to really do outward compulsions. So I would have to step through door frames a certain amount of times so that I would be protected or that my family would be protected. I continued to have to wash my hands so many times, and this had nothing to do with germs, by the way. It makes no sense. It makes no sense logically, but I thought that if I walked through a door frame 5 times that my family would be protected. So I went through stuff like that, and it was really debilitating. This is when it started to take hold of my life and keep me from getting places on time, keep me from doing my jobs well, and all of that. And it just kind of started to take a hold of my life, but I still didn't get help for it. And then I think it was 2018, so I was 20, I started to get it really bad. By that May, I started to experience severe heart palpitations, which, as you could probably tell, was my worst nightmare, because I had always had OCD and anxiety over, health. And I started to get them basically all day. They would last for like 30 minutes, and then they go away, and then they come back, and then they go away and come back. I was super stressed out at the time, because not only did I have this mental shit I was dealing with, but I was also working as a server, and I was working 3 jobs at the time, 3 serving jobs, and I'm an extreme introvert. It was really stressful for me. I needed to make money because I was living on my own without my family. I'm really sensitive as well, so things affect me, I think, more than some other people let it affect them. And I wasn't eating all day. I was drinking a shit ton of coffee. It was 100 degrees outside, and I was having anxiety. And so I started having severe heart palpitations, and I didn't know what was going on with me. I was scared, literally scared for my life. And I ended up going home for the summer. I didn't even go to the doctor. I just went home for the summer. I was still having them, but after a couple weeks being with my family, it was like they just went away. And so I booked a doctor's appointment to get the EKG and get my heart all checked out. And by that time, my heart palpitations had stopped. So they didn't really find anything wrong with me. They did my blood work, checked my thyroid, blah, 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 all the boring stuff. I'm interested in it, but not everybody is. I got all that blood work done and everything, and nothing was wrong with me, but I still lived with this constant anxiety that, like, oh, well, they didn't test me when I actually had shit going on, so they don't know. And that's kind of what I experienced for a while. I think going into 2019, I got a new job, which was actually, I think, really helpful for me. I started working only one job. It was a serving job, but I loved it there. I loved the people I worked with. I finally started to make friends, which is a big deal for me because I am very antisocial and it's hard for me to make friendships. And I finally made friends. I made like best friends. I loved my manager. I just loved working there. It was like a bar job, so I was there till like 2 in the morning, sometimes later. I loved it there though. I started to get out of my anxiety shell. I started to kind of just live life and I was having fun. The only problem is I got a little bit into drinking too much that year because I was newly 21. I have addiction in my family, especially when it comes to alcohol, so I tend to just not drink a lot because I know how it could turn out. Let's just fast forward. Great, I moved back home from Arizona in summer of 2019 and my anxiety was basically like completely gone. My OCD was still there, but it wasn't giving me extreme anxiety like it was before. Fast forward to like COVID time, of course my health anxiety started to kick in again because it was COVID and no one knew what the fuck was going on, and so I was like, oh my god, something could happen. I kind of dealt with it well then though. I was proud of myself, but my OCD always kicked in on severe anxiety feelings that I had, so I started doing my compulsions again. They never really went away. Fast forward, I meet my fiance, I'm doing music, I'm distracted as hell, I'm feeling good, you know, I'm distracted, I'm being shown other things about myself that I need to work on, like my self-esteem. That's a whole other story though. I need to stop getting off track. This is what I do, I get off track. Okay, anyway, so let's fast forward. I'm living my life, I'm distracted, a lot of shit is happening at the end of 2020 into 2021, and I'm very distracted, okay? Distracted from my OCD, it was basically non-existent. Distraction is great, but it actually makes things 10 times worse because when those distractions start to go away or they get familiar to you, what comes back in? Your OCD, and it hits you 10 times harder. That's what happened to me. 2021 passes, the distractions are starting to wear away, my OCD is coming back and getting worse. 2022 happens, I go through 2022 with my normal OCD, but I'm starting to fall into a depression because of what I had went through in the previous couple of years, which I don't want to get into. So I started falling into a depression. I started not wanting to do anything. I started feeling extremely upset. And this is when I started to feel like I didn't want to be here anymore, which is a lot for me to say because I always wanted to live. My anxiety always wanted me to survive. I always wanted to live, and now I was feeling like I didn't. Okay. So we're kind of getting into the part for me, which is going to be hard to talk about. In August of 2022, only 3 months ago actually. Wait, I have to say this beforehand. I experienced a couple incidences of violence, not directly affecting me, but just around me in my world and in, you know, just my space. Not my home or anything, but you know, you can kind of guess I just was like surrounded by a little bit of violence. It was a lot for me because, like I've said, I'm very sensitive. It really affected me, and it kind of made me even more scared of the world, but less scared of health and more scared of people, because people can be unpredictable. And I internalized it, and I kind of got too enmeshed with other people and what they were going through and the violence that they had to deal with. And I took it on as if it was my own, if that makes sense, which was my first mistake. I thought too deeply on things and people's experiences and my experiences, and that was when my harm OCD was triggered. Now, this is not going to make sense to a lot of people, and I only want to talk about it because it could have helped me so much if somebody had been really transparent about harm OCD and their experience with it. I was so afraid of the world and of people hurting me that I basically couldn't live. I didn't want to go outside. Everything was too much for me. And then it flipped. Where I started to become scared of myself. I started to think I was going to hurt someone. I started to think I was going to hurt myself. And I had the worst, most awful thoughts that I've never had in my life. And it was the worst, most rock bottom time of my entire life. And I just didn't want to live anymore. I just didn't want to live anymore. And now I don't want to talk too much about like the sob story of it all, but basically the worst experience. I do not wish harm OCD on anybody. So anyway, let's continue. I started dealing with my harm OCD, and I knew that I had to do something about my OCD once and for all. And so I started going to therapy, and that was a big deal for me because I've gone to therapy sporadically throughout my life, but I never stuck with it. I never stuck with it to where it actually helped me. So I started going to therapy for OCD. It's called ERP, which means exposure response prevention. Basically what you do is you expose yourself to your triggers and to the things that really kick your OCD into like gear. You expose yourself to it and you learn how to sit through the severe anxiety that you feel and cope with it. And that has been the biggest thing that has helped me throughout this entire process, is talking to someone once a week and putting ERP into practice in my life, because now I know how to sit through my anxiety like I never have before. I know how to sit through my emotions and not let them take over me like I have most of my life. I always got so angry, got so emotional. I let things take over me, and now I know how to sit through the most uncomfortable physical bodily sensations and physical anxiety sensations, and I just know how to sit through it all. And I know that in the moment it sucks, but I always know that it's gonna pass. And each time it gets a little easier, and each time the sensations are less. I'm just so grateful for my therapist and ERP as a whole, because it really has helped me. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that I didn't take medication, because I did start taking medication back in September. I don't know if it's the mix of the medicine and ERP that's been helping me, or if it's just the ERP, or if it's just the medicine, but I really do think the ERP has taught me how to sit through my anxiety like I never have been able to before. If anyone is going through or similar things that I've gone through, especially if you're having panic attacks and letting anxiety kind of take hold of your life, or letting your emotions take hold of your life, or if you're going through harm OCD, which if you are, I am so sorry, because it is the worst experience. And sorry, okay. If you are going through any of this, or if you have OCD really bad and it's, a different theme other than harm OCD or death OCD or whatever, I really do recommend going to therapy, ERP, and taking it into your fucking own hands. And it'll be extremely hard, but I promise you, if you keep doing it and you stick to it, and even if you need to take medicine, like, don't shy away from that. I never wanted to take medicine, but it got so bad that I felt like I needed to. But you're not weak for taking medicine. You're not weak for having a different mind than some other people. It's okay, as long as you are willing to do the work that you need to help yourself. And I know with mental illness how hard it is to get a hold of, but there are things you can do to make it manageable. And that's the main thing I want to put out here too for people dealing with OCD or anxiety or depression or any mental illness, is it's never going to go away, but it will get manageable, and you will be able to be happy again, because life is a constant roller coaster with ups and downs, and you will be able to be happy and live a normal life. It'll just be your normal with OCD and being able to manage it. And I promise that if you do the work needed, you will get a hold of it, and just like me, because I'm so proud of myself. I'm so happy for what I have done in the past 4 months or 3 months. I'm so happy. I finally fucking took it into my own hands, and I still have a long way to go, but I can manage it now. And that's such a big deal for me, because my whole life I dealt with it and I didn't know how to get rid of it. Wait, wrong wording, not get rid of. I didn't know how to manage it, and now I know how to manage it. That's basically what I want to talk about today. Just like I said, no, you're not alone. I've been to the darkest fucking places in my mind, and I can tell you right now, I'm seeing the light again. I'm regaining my sense of self, my trust in myself, and also I'm getting into touch with who I was in the moments in time when I didn't have anxiety and when I didn't have OCD, or when they were very far in the back of my mind. I'm very grateful for my whole support system. What I want to end with is, if you don't feel like you have a support system you can talk to, or you're harm OCD, you can message me, DM me on Instagram about it. I will listen to you and I'll be there for you. And also just know that you do have a support system, because I'm here. That's all I have to say. I hope this wasn't so erratic all over the place. I didn't plan this out. I just kind of wanted to vent. So thank you. Bye.